Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing, and I'm here with my weekly wrap up. And I read so many books this week, particularly in the last few days. I'm going to go straight on into the first book I finished this week, which I briefly talked about last week, and that is The Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. I think I might have called this The Opposite of Okay last week, and for some reason I keep thinking it is called The Opposite of Okay in my head, but it's not. It's The Opposite of Always. This is a YA contemporary about a boy called Jack who meets this girl called Kate while he is visiting the college he's going to attend once he graduates his senior year in high school, and he quickly falls in love with Kate, and then I think it's 3 months after they meet she ends up dying, and Jack finds himself in this time loop where he keeps reliving these 3 months that since the time he meets Kate to the time that she dies, and he keeps trying to figure out ways that he can save her life, and it just never works. This is kind of like, this is branded as this like amazing love story. I would not call it an amazing love story. I actually think this is mostly a story about Jack's love for other people, like his friendships mostly. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on his friendships within all the time loops that he takes part in to try and save Kate, and I felt like the exploration of friendship and what it means to be a friend and what you have to do or don't do to be a good friend, I really enjoyed that part of it. In terms of Jack and Kate's relationship, I just didn't buy it. I feel like I didn't really get to know who Kate was. We were just kind of getting her, like, we were obviously getting who she was from Jack's point of view. And I just feel like it wasn't, like, I don't know, just their love story wasn't, like, I wasn't buying it. What was being sold to me, I wasn't buying it. And I just didn't really care. I didn't find myself particularly obsessed like any time that she died. It was just kind of more like I just had a very neutral reaction to it. I just wasn't that crazy about her. There are times that Jack does act like a really crappy person because of Kate and because of things he's doing to try and save Kate. He does neglect a lot of other people in his life, and there's some things he does that are just so inexcusable, and I feel like there's times where he doesn't actually really get called up on those things, and you know, I feel like, and because he's in time loops, he kind of gets away with a lot of things as well, which can be kind of irritating. So overall, like, this, like, the writing was good. The characters, most of the characters I did enjoy. I feel like I got something different out of this book than other people did, because I was getting the friendship aspect of it rather than the love aspect of it, I guess. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what other people think of it. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. So yeah. After that, I finished an audiobook I've been reading for the last couple of weeks, and that was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is a reread for me. I originally read it in physical format, and I decided to give it a go on a reread on audiobook, as I saw it on my library audio app. So it was a full cast narration, which was pretty cool. I did really enjoy listening to it on audiobook. The story itself is great. I love the story. If people don't know, it is set in this fantasy world, and it is basically about a heist. These group of teenagers who all have these different skill sets, are all kind of basically criminals, get together to try and break into this really highly guarded fortress to try and steal something, and it's just kind of their adventures and their relationships with each other. And I really like the story, so I really liked hearing it again on audiobook and consuming it that way. I will say I just am not a massive fan of like super duper American accents with audiobooks, because obviously my ears aren't accustomed to that. So the fact that like all the characters were American kind of annoyed me a little bit, because I felt like in this world particularly there were some characters like Nina who could have been Russian, because we all know like Ravka is a very Russian inspired country, and then there were other characters from Ravka who would have been given Russian accents by the narrators, but then the main character from that place didn't have a Russian accent, and I was a bit like, okay, I feel like there was just lost opportunities there for some really nice accent work. And I would have liked to have seen that more. So yeah, I gave this, like, my original reading of this, I think I gave a 5 out of 5 stars, and rereading it on audiobook, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. After that, I finished Holy Sister by Mark Lawrence, which is the third and final book in the Book of the Ancestor trilogy. The first book is Red Sister, the second book is Grey Sister, and now the third and final book is Holy Sister. So this is a fantasy book, a high fantasy adult book. We are following from Red Sister this character called Nona Grey. We follow her from the time she's 8 years old. She's around 17 years old in the present day in this book. So we followed her for almost like 10 years in the story, and we basically have followed her when she was brought into this convent that's run by these nuns, but these nuns are very different types of nuns than what we would think of, and basically she's trained to be an assassin, to be a warrior, to be this person who's able to hone these magical skills and use these skills to basically help protect her country and protect it from enemies. And it's really interesting. So in this book, this kind of war that's been brewing for the last 2 books finally kind of comes to a head, and we really get to see Nona use a lot of the skills that we've seen her learn in the past 2 books, and we see her kind of like bring her education to full effect in this book, which I loved. I loved seeing her being a full sister and being a full like warrior, and just being really badass, and it was really, really cool. I will say this book is actually kind of short, especially for like a fantasy book. It's about like 330-ish pages, 340 pages, and I feel like it could have been a bit longer. I actually would have liked it to have been a little bit longer. I felt like there was a lot happening at certain points in the book, and I feel like we were jumping around a lot, and it was a little bit like a whirlwind, and I feel like I kind of needed it to slow down a tiny bit so I could really just savor every single part of the world and all the action that we were getting. I wanted to savor that action, and I feel like because everything was kind of happening so fast, I didn't get the chance to do that. So I would have liked, I think I would have liked the ending to have been a little bit more drawn out. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars though, and I did really enjoy it, and I think the next time I kind of read these books like within a year of each other, each one, and I feel like I will definitely reread this trilogy in the future, but I'll read them all together, and I feel like if I do that, I will get I'll probably have a better feel for the story as one altogether, and I won't be like having to remember different parts of the world. And I will say in this book there was a little bit at the start from Mark Lawrence, and it was basically the story so far, little kind of, wasn't even a chapter, it was just like this little summary at the very start of the book, and Mark Lawrence kind of reminded readers of different points that they would need to know and remember for what's happening in the rest of the book. And I really, really appreciated that, because I feel with fantasy books things can get really complex, and it's really easy to forget a lot of things, especially if you're if it's been a year since you've read the book since it was released since the last one was released. So I really appreciated that Mark Lawrence did that, and I feel like more fantasy writers should do that, or sci-fi writers should do that. Just give a little bit of a refresher for readers who might not have had a chance to reread the previous books before the next one came out. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars, really enjoyed it, love this world, love Mark Lawrence's writing, one of my favourite writers of all time. And then I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I've been highly anticipating and finally got around to. And guys, I read this in less than a day because I had to devour it. I literally could not put this book down until I finished every last page. I got this book from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, so thank you to NetGalley. I was delighted to have been able to receive it. And this is all about this band called Daisy Jones and the Six, who made this incredible album in the 70s, and they were really, really famous, and they did like sold out world tour, and then one day during the tour, I think near the middle of the tour, they broke up. No one ever figured out like what had happened, why they broke up, until now when this biography has come out about them. And we are kind of getting the whole story through like interviews with all the different band members, and figuring out like, you know, how they all started, how Daisy Jones came into the band, how they went from the Six to Daisy Jones and the Six, and all the events leading up to their eventual breakup. This was just so good. It was just so like, and I really liked the fact that it was like, it was not like a normal storytelling narrative. Getting it in, like, it was almost like you were reading like a really long like magazine interview almost about things, and it was just done so well. And it was like, even though things weren't being described like really like, you know, like the way you would a normal book, like, you know, the room being described or the studio being described, I could see it, I could see everything, and I was there, even though those little details that would normally be in a normal book weren't there. I could still see everything, and I was still brought into the story in like a really vivid way. And I really enjoyed the fact that because you're getting each band member's perspective of different events, you're kind of you're actually getting a lot of contradictions between each story. And like, you know, one person will be like, oh well, I drove us there, and the other person will be like, I drove us there, and you're like, well, who drove you there? And you kind of have to, as a reader, have to kind of decide who you believe. And I really liked that, and I really liked just having that little, like, it was kind of like a this weird freedom of like, who do I believe, who do I like the most, whose story do I want to go with. I loved the way Taylor Jenkins Reid, I found it with Evelyn Hugo as well. I loved the way she writes female characters who are not like, they're likable, but there's all these flaws to them as well. But I love the way that they own themselves so completely, and in this one in particular, Daisy Jones, Daisy Jones, there's another female character called Karen who was the keyboardist in the band, and then there was a woman called Camilla who was one of the band members' wives, and I feel like all of the characters, the female characters, they own their sexuality in this amazing way that is completely theirs, and it's not there just for like a man's gaze, and there's a lot of really good dialogue and statements in the book about from Daisy Jones, from Karen, from Camilla, about a woman owning her own story and owning her own self, and not just being there to give herself to a man or give her ideas to a man. Like, they want to be themselves and they want to own their ideas and their fame and their glory, and I just love that. There was this really nice kind of like feminist undertone to the book, and the story of just like owning your own sexuality, owning your sensuality, owning your body, and you choosing what you want to do with that, and how kind of men might perceive it. That's not your problem, that's their problem, but you know you own yourself, and I loved that message. I will say it wasn't really like unpredictable for me. I pretty much knew, kind of could figure out where the story was going, and what probably happened. I could kind of see all of that, and nothing really surprised me. There are like little twists that Taylor Jenkins Reid did, which I found that she did with Evelyn Hugo, where she kind of reveals these little things that kind of make you go, oh, like, but they won't be like, oh my god, like, it's not like this like absolutely crazy thing that changes the entire story, but it's just these little nuggets of information. It wasn't unpredictable, it was pretty predictable for me, but I still enjoyed every single moment of it. I love being able to consume a book like that. It's the first book in a while I feel like I've consumed so completely like that, so I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So I went from one of my favourite books of the year to one of my least favourite books of the year next, when I read Jacob's Ladder by Charlie Pike. This is a YA dystopian. I was sent this by O'Brien Press in exchange for an honest review, and this is like one of the worst books I've read in a really long time. Like, I feel like I went back like 10-15 years in like YA books, like, with this book, because there's just so many problems with it. Like, I just don't know, like, I just can't. So this is a book set in a world where solar flares have like destroyed the earth, and there's this boy called Leon who is this something called an initiate, and basically he has to kill someone in the wild to be this, kind of be a man, I guess, in this like world that he lives in. And there's this whole thing that the world, the human civilization living on Earth, has received messages from what seems to be an alien civilization saying that they're going to come and rescue them eventually, and you know, they all have to be prepared and they all have to be ready and purified to go to this alien civilization, I guess. And they're all waiting for these messages, basically, or they're waiting for the fourth and last message from this alien civilization. But before they all do that, Leon is just being an initiate and going off and killing this bind who is supposed to be the person he's supposed to be killing. So that is kind of what the back of the book says. And that is kind of what it is, but there's a lot more to it. I feel like this book was just so confusing and like didn't make sense. And there was just so many things happening in it, but there was like there seemed to be a lot of things happening, but then not a lot happened either. Leon just didn't seem to know anything about anything outside of where he grew up, which is kind of understandable, but at the same time it's just like, okay, but like, you don't live, like, there's all these colonies and they don't live that far apart from each other, so how do they all kind of, how does he not know anything? And we are kind of kept in the dark for a lot of the time, and there's all these things revealed about Leon and about how he might be this special kind of person, but we can't, like, there's no real explanation given as to why we suddenly only know this now, and why Leon is only knowing this now, and what happened for this to suddenly come out of him. Why was it dormant inside of him for so long? And then he has a slave who was like the only main female character in the book is his slave. Has a lot of different points in the book where she could run off and leave him, decides not to, seems to really care for him for no reason whatsoever, because he's not a nice person. Like, it's just like the way females characters are portrayed in this book and the way they are treated in this book is just so disgusting. I just really hated it. And like, we have Martha / Ulia, who is the slave. Then the other female character you see in the book is the person that Leon is supposed to kill in the wild, and you see people react to the fact that he has to kill a woman, and it's like, they all think, oh, like, they're really dishonouring you by making you kill a woman. It's like, why should he be dishonoured by like being given a woman? Like, a woman can be just as tough as a man, and you know, could pose as much danger as a man. Like, it felt like we just went back like 10 years, 15 years, like, with our way of, like, I don't know, I just feel like this book just like, I don't know, like you guys know what I mean, like it's just so bad. And then there was like this talk at one point about these men kind of speculating about the women bleeding between their legs and how they didn't even have to cut themselves to bleed between their legs, and I just felt like that was just so stupid, because obviously they're talking about periods, but I just feel like in a modern world where women are still, like, there's so much stigma around periods and menstruation. We still live in a world where in third world countries girls are missing school, like missing weeks of school because of their periods, and women are being like forced to spend weeks in little huts because of their periods, because they're deemed unclean. That sort of shit in these YA books, we don't need it. Like, we don't need it. And yeah, don't read it. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars because basically because like I felt like there was a degree of writing there that was good. Like, he could tell a story, but the story itself was terrible. Don't read this, like, please don't read this, it's so bad. After that, I read Mr. Salary by Sally Rooney to calm me down, and it did. I really enjoyed this one. This is just this tiny little, like, 30-page novella about this girl called Suki who is basically coming home. I think it's around Christmas time. She's coming home to visit her father, who's ill. And she is living with this man who she lived with when she was in college. He's a much older man than her, and we very quickly realise that they have this kind of weird relationship where it's not a sexual relationship, but it's like it should be, and they both want it to be, but it's just not there yet. And there's all these reasons why they shouldn't be together, and it's like basically there's like this book, there's like 30 pages, it's just like 30 pages of sexual tension basically, and we're waiting to see like what will happen. And then where it ends, I'm just like, no, but like I want to see what happens next. Like, it was really good. It was just this really, really brief look at this relationship, at the complexities of this relationship, and yeah, it just gave me what I wanted, but I still want more. I'm being greedy, and I want more of these 2 characters because I would love to see what happened next with them, but I don't think we'll ever get it. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Then finally, I finished Remembered by Yvonne Battle-Felton. This is a book that is longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. It is set in 1910, and it follows this woman called Spring who finds out that her son, who is in, I think he's in his 40s, was involved in this kind of weird kind of tram accident where it seems like he purposely drove this tram into a crowd of people, and he's in hospital. He's dying because he was injured really badly in this accident as well, and Spring goes to his hospital bedside, and starts reading him the story of his family and the story of his people and where he came from, and it's basically a story of slavery, a story of emancipation, and it's a story of a lot of pain but a lot of love as well, and I quite enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the writing in this. It was quite like, it was really rich, and it was really flowing, but I feel like it wasn't too much either. It was quite simple as well, and it made it easy to read. I thought there was so much in the story that's very tough to read, because obviously there's sexual assault, there is abuse, there is kidnap, there is a lot of racism, and yeah, it's people treating people in terrible ways, so yeah, it is hard to read, but the way you see the characters just kind of keep struggling through is really just inspiring, and yeah, I think this would be a great book for people who also liked Homegoing by Jessie. I think it's not completely similar, but I feel like the style of writings and the way of writing is a little bit similar, so I think people who liked Homegoing might like this one as well. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, just because I found that I wasn't like stuck into it where I just was like, I need to read the next chapter, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars rather than a 4 stars, but I still really enjoyed it. So that's everything I've read this week. It's quite a long video because I read a lot this week, as you can see, and most of these books I've read since Friday, like from Daisy Jones onwards. So I've read 4 books since Friday, and today is Sunday afternoon, so yeah, I read a lot. You know, all your guys' thoughts, as always. Let me know what you guys are reading, what you plan to read, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.